What's worse than missing the playoffs? Making a draft pick so disastrous that it sets your franchise back for years. The NBA draft is supposed to be the night of hope, the night where struggling teams can change their fortunes with the right young star. One pick can redefine a team's entire future. Get it right, and you end up with generational players like Giannis Antetokounmpo or Luka Doncic. Get it wrong, and you're left with years of regret, wasted potential, and fans wondering what could have been. In this video, we're going to revisit the past decade of NBA drafts year by year and look at the pick that aged the worst. And trust me, some of these might still sting if it was your team that made the mistake. 2015, Jahlil Okafor. The 2015 draft was stacked with talent, but for the Philadelphia 76ers, their pick at number 3 turned into one of the most regrettable decisions of the decade. They selected Jahlil Okafor, a dominant college big man who looked unstoppable in the low post at Duke. At the time, the Sixers were deep in the process, collecting young prospects in hopes of building a contender. Okafor was supposed to be a franchise cornerstone, but the NBA was changing fast, and Okafor's game didn't change with it. His old-school post-up style became a relic almost overnight, while modern offenses relied on spacing, shooting, and versatile defense. Okafor could score, but he struggled defensively, couldn't stretch the floor, and didn't fit the evolving style of play. Within just a few seasons, his minutes shrank, his value plummeted, and he bounced from team to team before fading out of the league entirely. Meanwhile, players like Kristaps Porzingis and Devin Booker, both taken later in that same draft, blossomed into stars. The Sixers had options, but they picked a player whose skill set aged poorly. Okafor became the first painful reminder of how quickly the wrong draft choice can turn into a wasted opportunity. 2016, Ben Simmons. The 2016 NBA draft had no debate at the top. Ben Simmons was the clear-cut number 1 overall pick, a 6'10 forward out of LSU with guard-like skills and passing vision that drew instant comparisons to LeBron James. The Philadelphia 76ers, still in the heart of their rebuild, believed they had found the player who could carry the process into its winning phase. At first, Simmons looked every bit the part. He won Rookie of the Year in 2018, became a 3-time All-Star, and was recognized as one of the best defenders in the league. His ability to guard multiple positions and create plays in transition made him a unique weapon. For a while, it seemed like Philadelphia had struck gold, but the flaws everyone hoped he would fix never went away. Simmons flat out refused to develop a jump shot. His unwillingness to shoot outside the paint became a glaring weakness that opposing defenses exploited. The breaking point came in the 2021 playoffs against the Atlanta Hawks, where he famously passed up an open dunk in crunch time. That single play became the defining image of his collapse. From there, things spiraled. Simmons clashed with teammates, demanded a trade, and battled injuries while his production declined. Meanwhile, players picked after him, like Brandon Ingram, Jaylen Brown, Jamal Murray, and Domantas Sabonis, developed into reliable stars and playoff performers. What was supposed to be a franchise-altering pick instead left the Sixers frustrated and empty-handed. Simmons is a rare case where a player with undeniable talent and accolades still managed to become one of the most disappointing number 1 picks of the modern era. 2017, Markelle Fultz. The 2017 draft began with enormous hype surrounding Markelle Fultz. After a standout season at Washington, where he averaged over 23 points per game with smooth scoring ability from all 3 levels, scouts viewed him as the safest bet at number 1. The Philadelphia 76ers traded up to secure him, convinced that Fultz alongside Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid would be the young trio to dominate the NBA for years. But almost immediately, disaster struck. A mysterious shoulder injury completely derailed his shot mechanics. The fluid jumper that had made him the top prospect in the country suddenly vanished. Fultz looked uncomfortable on the court, his confidence evaporated, and his playing time shrank. For fans and analysts, it was shocking to see a number 1 pick lose the very skill that got him drafted in the first place. The Sixers quickly moved on, trading him to the Orlando Magic, where Fultz did find some redemption. He carved out a role as a solid contributor, using his athleticism and playmaking to become a respectable starter. But while it was a nice comeback story, it was nowhere near the level of production expected from the first overall selection. Adding salt to the wound, the player chosen just 2 spots later was Jason Tatum, who blossomed into a perennial all-star and an MVP caliber scorer. Donovan Mitchell, another star guard, was also in the same class. The Sixers could have drafted a franchise cornerstone, but instead, they ended up with one of the most infamous draft busts in recent memory. 2018, Marvin Bagley III. The 2018 NBA draft is remembered for producing some of the league's brightest stars, but it is also remembered for one of the most painful draft mistakes in recent memory. With the second overall pick, the Sacramento Kings selected Marvin Bagley III, a highly athletic forward out of Duke. On paper, Bagley looked like the perfect modern big man, long, agile, and capable of scoring inside and out. The Kings believed they had found their cornerstone, but the reality never matched the promise. Bagley struggled with injuries almost from the start, which stalled his development and limited his time on the court. When he did play, he showed flashes of scoring ability, but never provided consistent defense or outside shooting. In an era where versatile bigs are expected to stretch the floor and guard multiple positions, Bagley often looked stuck in between roles. Sacramento waited for him to break out, but that leap never came. What makes this pick infamous is who the Kings passed on. Luka Doncic, taken 3rd overall by the Mavericks, quickly emerged as one of the best players in the NBA, a generational talent with MVP potential. Trae Young, taken 5th, became a franchise star in Atlanta. Both players transformed their teams into playoff contenders, while Bagley struggled to hold down a starting role. 2019, Jarrett Culver. The 2019 draft was loaded with talent, but the Minnesota Timberwolves made one of the riskiest moves of the night. They traded up to the 6th overall pick to take Jarrett Culver, a wing out of Texas Tech who had just led his team to the NCAA championship game. Scouts praised his defense, work ethic, and versatility, and Minnesota saw him as the kind of two-way player who could finally stabilize their backcourt. Unfortunately, Culver's NBA career never came close to matching that promise. From the beginning, he struggled with shooting efficiency, failing to stretch the floor or create consistent offense. Defensively, he showed effort but not enough impact to offset his offensive shortcomings. Without a standout skill to lean on, he quickly faded into a rotation role. By his 3rd season, Culver was already bouncing between teams, and within a few years, he was out of the league entirely. For a player taken so high, his decline was shockingly fast. The Timberwolves, who invested draft capital to move up and get him, were left with nothing to show for it. 2020, James Wiseman. The Golden State Warriors entered the 2020 draft in an unusual position. After years of dominance, injuries to Stephen Curry and Klay Thompson dropped them to the lottery, where they landed the number 2 overall pick. With it, they selected James Wiseman, a 7-foot center out of Memphis with rare size and athleticism. On paper, it looked like the Warriors had found their next interior anchor. But the fit was never right. Wiseman's game was raw, and he struggled to adapt to Golden State's fast read and react system built on constant ball movement. Instead of being the rim-running force they hoped for, he often looked lost on both ends of the floor. To make matters worse, recurring injuries stalled his development and limited his playing time. By his 3rd season, the Warriors decided to cut ties, trading him away in search of more reliable contributors. Meanwhile, LaMelo Ball, taken 3rd overall, became Rookie of the Year and the face of the Charlotte Hornets. Tyrese Halliburton, picked 12th, developed into an all-star point guard and one of the brightest young playmakers in the league. Wiseman's story is a reminder that even powerhouse franchises can stumble when the wrong pick collides with the wrong situation. 2021, TBD pick. When it comes to the 2021 NBA draft, it's still too soon to label anyone the worst pick. Players like Cade Cunningham, Jalen Green, and Evan Mobley are all still carving out their careers. And while some lottery names have struggled with injuries or inconsistency, it's unfair to call them busts just a few years in. Development in the NBA often takes time, and what looks like a disappointment early can quickly turn around with the right situation. Some analysts have pointed to players like Jalen Suggs or Jonathan Kuminga as underwhelming compared to expectations, but both are still young with plenty of potential left to unlock. Unlike earlier drafts where the mistakes are obvious, 2021 remains an open book. History tells us it usually takes 4 to 5 years before the true busts reveal themselves, which means this class hasn't had enough time to write its final verdict. 2022 TBD pick. The 2022 NBA Draft is still too fresh to crown a definitive worst pick. While Paolo Banchero quickly emerged as a star and proved the Orlando Magic right at number 1, not every lottery selection has lived up to the hype so far. Some players have battled injuries, while others are still struggling to carve out consistent roles on their teams. Names like Ousmane Dieng and Johnny Davis have been mentioned in early disappointment conversations, as both have had difficulty adjusting to NBA speed and physicality. But at the same time, they're still incredibly young, and development can take years. Labeling them busts now would be premature. The truth is, draft classes often take time to separate the stars from the misses. While some 2022 prospects already look like future cornerstones, it will take another few years before we can confidently point to the worst decision of that draft night. 2023 TBD pick. The 2023 draft is even more difficult to judge, and that's because most of these players have barely begun their careers. Victor Wembanyama, the clear number 1 overall pick, has already shown flashes of greatness and looks like he'll live up to the hype. But for others taken in the lottery, the jury is still out. A few players have struggled with playing time, consistency, or fitting into their team system. But that doesn't necessarily make them busts. Sometimes it takes multiple seasons, or even a change of scenery, before a player finds their rhythm. Calling anyone the worst pick of 2023 at this stage would be rushing to judgment. What we can say is that the class has star potential at the top, and over the next 2 or 3 years, it will become clearer who was overdrafted and who will prove their doubters wrong. 2024, Jalen Tyson. Unlike 2022 and 2023, the 2024 draft already has a few picks that raised eyebrows on draft night. One of the most criticized was Cleveland's selection of Jalen Tyson. A talented wing from California, Tyson wasn't seen as a terrible player, but many analysts questioned the fit. The Cavaliers already had a crowded backcourt and plenty of scoring options, so using their pick on another ball-dominant guard felt redundant. The bigger issue was value. At that stage of the draft, there were prospects available who offered more upside or filled clearer needs. Tyson, while skilled, didn't project as a future star, which made his selection feel underwhelming compared to other late first-round players. It's far too early to close the book on Tyson, but the early perception is that Cleveland passed on players who could have provided greater long-term value, making this one of the more questionable choices of 2024. 2025, Hansen Yang. The Portland Trail Blazers made one of the most surprising decisions in the 2025 NBA Draft by selecting Hansen Yang at number 16. Dubbed the Chinese Jokic, Yang is a 7'1" center with impressive passing vision for his size and flashes of touch around the basket. On paper, that sounds intriguing, but the reality is far less certain. Most scouts had Yang projected as a second-round prospect at best. His game is raw, and he has yet to prove he can handle NBA-level speed, strength, and defensive assignments. Portland's roster also raised eyebrows, as they already had depth in the front court, making Yang's selection feel redundant rather than strategic. Media outlets and fans were quick to label it the biggest reach of the draft. While comparisons to Nikola Jokic might sound flattering, the likelihood of Yang reaching anywhere close to that level is slim. For now, his selection is widely viewed as the worst pick of 2025. Though, like all draft narratives, time will tell if Portland saw something the rest of the league missed. Sometimes these mistakes come down to poor scouting. Other times the issue is fit, with teams drafting players they don't truly need or can't properly develop. And in certain cases, instability within a franchise only accelerates a young player's downfall. Whatever the reason, one wrong pick can set a team back for years, both financially and competitively. That's what makes the NBA draft such a fascinating gamble. No matter how much data or film teams analyze, the element of uncertainty never goes away. For every hidden gem, there's a costly misstep. Now we want to hear from you. Which draft bust hurt your team the most? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and let's keep the debate going.